Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Maeve, and I work at Silicon Valley Community Foundation. We're delighted to have you here for this really important conversation. So we're going to go ahead and get started, and I'll turn it over to Nicole Taylor.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is great to see familiar names in the participant list. Again, I'm Nicole Taylor, the president and CEO of the Silicon Valley Community Foundation. Before we begin, I'd like to remind you that we do have a Q&A function available for you. Please feel free to submit your questions at any time. Maeve will be monitoring those, and we'll do our best to work them into the program where appropriate, and we will also have a Q&A section of the webinar at the end, so you can, we will try to address all the questions there as well. Many of you have joined us on our other recent webinars, and we have been really proud to host community conversations where, together with donors, companies, and our community partners, we discuss pressing issues facing our communities and how we can work together to find solutions that will transform our communities, and always using the critically important lens of equity and inclusion. We know that COVID-19 has exacerbated existing inequities, making life for those already living in the margins even more perilous. Since the beginning of the pandemic, the Community Foundation's response work has focused on supporting low-income families, undocumented immigrants, and communities of color, groups that have all been and continue to be disproportionately impacted by the pandemic. Thanks to the generosity of our donors, we have been able to distribute so far $193 million in grants to support those most in need through this crisis. Unfortunately, the struggles persist. And today we are here to call attention to a group that has been hit particularly hard by the pandemic, our undocumented neighbors. Undocumented workers make up the majority of the labor force in agriculture, home health care, construction, hotels, restaurants, and food service, all among the hardest hit sectors during this pandemic. And most often, they work in lower wage and less stable roles. They face higher rates of job loss, and yet if they are still employed, they are exposed to higher risks of contracting the virus and are less likely to have health care. In May, the Mercury News reported that in Santa Clara County's poorest zip codes, the death rate from COVID-19 is 4 times higher than in the wealthiest zip codes. Poverty rates for undocumented families in San Mateo and Santa Clara counties are at around 40% compared to about 7% overall in our region. And 2 weeks ago, the Law Foundation of Silicon Valley released a report that identified over 43,000 renter households in our region that are at the highest risk of eviction. And as you've probably already guessed, a majority of those households consist of undocumented families. Now, despite paying over $7 billion in local, state, and federal taxes annually, undocumented individuals have been excluded from federal relief, unemployment benefits, and most state safety net programs. There are over 300,000 undocumented individuals living in our 2 counties, most who have been shut out of state and federal aid. And then, of course, there's anti-immigrant rhetoric that continues on the national stage, and with it comes fear, alienation, and isolation among our undocumented neighbors. I cannot help but point out the fact that those working so hard to keep our communities afloat are the same people fighting for their own health and can barely provide food for their own families or a roof over their heads. But I am hopeful and heartened by those in our community who are fighting every day for the rights and livelihoods of our undocumented neighbors. There are groups working tirelessly to advocate for the inclusion of these folks in future federal and state relief measures. The Community Foundation has partnered with local nonprofits that have committed to providing assistance to all members of our communities, regardless of an individual's documentation status. We are committed to working across all sectors to examine how we foster real change and how we can rebuild our systems through a lens of equity so that all members of our communities can lead safe, healthy, and financially stable lives. And we are seeing all sectors coming together, philanthropy, business, government, nonprofit, to support our community's most vulnerable neighbors, like our undocumented neighbors, through this crisis. And a shining example of this, and what we're going to focus on today, is the San Mateo County Immigrant Relief Fund. It was established in July by the San Mateo County Board of Supervisors. The fund helps San Mateo County residents who are economically impacted by COVID-19 and are not eligible for state or federal assistance because of their immigration status. It provides money to help families cover essential needs such as food and medicine. And most importantly, it provides them with some much needed hope that they can weather this storm. On July 8th, John A. Sobrato announced that he would seed the fund with a $5.2 million grant. The Sobrato Family Foundation is providing another $3 million for the undocumented communities in Santa Clara County and the Bay Area. John and his family have been long-standing partners with the Silicon Valley Community Foundation, and we have been proud to support the Sobrato family's individual and collective philanthropy through the years. John joins us here today to discuss the Immigrant Relief Fund. Also joining us is José Quiñonez, founder and CEO of the Mission Asset Fund, an award-winning nonprofit that produces innovative nationwide models for integrating financially excluded low-income communities into the financial mainstream. José and his organization are administering the Immigrant Relief Fund, supporting families through the application process and providing services for recipients' long-term resilience. Before we jump into our discussion, I'd like to share with you a very touching video from individuals who have received assistance from the fund. Please take a look.
Hola, mi nombre es Eni Lemus. Tengo dos niñas y vivo por 15 años aquí en Daly City. Mis niñas una está en Woodrow Wilson y la otra en Benjamin Franklin. Desde marzo perdí mi trabajo. Yo limpiaba casas y hasta el momento no me han llamado a trabajar. Marzo y abril fueron los meses más duros en mi hogar porque a mi esposo le cortaron horas en su trabajo. Los ingresos en mi hogar se fueron abajo. Entonces empezamos a usar tarjetas de crédito y ahora estamos endeudados con eso. Los intereses son muy altos. Yo soy líder de Fe en Acción y he hecho muchas llamadas a bastantes personas y me cuentan que deben hasta 4 o 5 meses de renta. Yo he logrado pagar la renta, pero otras personas no. Y no sabemos qué va a pasar con estas personas cuando el moratorio termine. No queremos que estas personas sean desalojadas de su hogar, que es su escuela, su templo y todo lo que hacen en su casa. Quiero agradecer al señor Sobrato y su fundación por ayudar a los más necesitados en este tiempo de pandemia. Los $1,000 que yo recibí los usé para pagar tarjetas de crédito. Todavía no salgo de la deuda, pero me ayudó en gran manera. Gracias también a las personas que hacen posible esta ayuda. Dios les bendiga por este gesto tan noble. Y les invito a que sigan donando porque todavía hay personas que no han recibido esta ayuda. Y el fondo necesita incrementarse porque hay muchas personas que lo necesitan. Gracias.
Para mí fue de gran alivio porque yo pude solventar algunos gastos, como pues pude comprar alguna despensa para mi hogar. Igual mi carro necesitaba un servicio y pude hacérselo con ese dinero. Fue para mí de gran ayuda y era una gran necesidad y una gran necesidad que seguimos teniendo y que es un alivio. Igual le doy las gracias en nombre de mi comunidad entera. Todos ellos están contentos. He hablado ya, alguna gente lo ha recibido y están muy agradecidos y confiados porque en estos momentos hay mucha incertidumbre, porque sabemos que hay gente que nada más promete y nos dejan esperando. Entonces, esta vez, pues, ha sido real.
John, we're going to start with you. You have been a philanthropic leader in Silicon Valley for so many years. You've really set the example for what philanthropy can achieve in our region. And I'm thrilled that I'm able to have a conversation with you about your efforts to support undocumented folks here in Silicon Valley. Can you start by telling us a bit more about your family's history of philanthropy here in Silicon Valley? I know many of the folks on this really do want to hear about the history of philanthropy for you and your family.
Well, good afternoon, Nicole.
Sure.
So I started off in the real estate business back in the late 50s while attending Santa Clara University. I was selling homes 3 days a week and going to school 3 days a week. I eventually graduated into the development business, working with my mother in the late 60s. In the late 70s, I founded the Sobrato development companies, and at the same time made my children and lately our grandchildren partners. Since its founding, the Sobrato organization has developed about 15 million square feet of R&D and office buildings in Silicon Valley, and another 10,000 apartment units. About 24 years ago, before my mother died, we decided to start the Sobrato Family Foundation to give back to those communities where we built our business. Since our foundation's founding, individual family members and our foundation have donated about $650 million, primarily to local communities that serve the needy in our area. Thank you.
Great.
We'll go on to Jose.
Yes, I'm going to go on to Jose. Jose, please tell us a little bit about Mission Asset Fund's work in the community and how you're supporting undocumented residents. And then I want to know how you connected with John. This great work.
Yes, I'm still trying to figure that out, but I do count my my blessings for when that happened. You know, I've been running the Mission Asset Fund for the past 14 years. Started working in the Mission District in San Francisco to help low-income and immigrant families build and improve their financial security. At the time when we were building the organization, even trying to come up with the programming and how do you actually do that? I mean, how do you actually help somebody build their financial security when, you know, in fact, you know, over 50% of people were unbanked, didn't have checking accounts, savings accounts, they were credit invisible, didn't have credit scores, no credit histories. And so it was really, you know, it was really a big challenge. It was like, well, how do you make that happen? Right. And so from day one, well, we said, you know, instead of coming in to this community and saying like, oh, we're going to provide them with all the answers, we said, you know, actually there's a lot of richness that's already happening in the community. And so we needed to find out what the solutions were. And so we developed programs from what we call a strength-based approach, which is about meeting people where they are and building on what is good in their lives. And then from that, we built a slew of different programs and services over the years. But that strategy about, you know, meeting people where they are, building on what's good in their lives has really been a strategy that not just worked for MAF, but something that I've been talking about so that others can implement in their own organizations as well.
Great. So how did you and John connect? John, how did you connect with Jose?
When I decided to replicate a similar program in Santa Clara County called Santa Clara Strong Phase 2, I thought there was a need for something like that in San Mateo County.
Yes.
So I decided to seed the fund with $5 million, plus a couple $100,000 to cover all the administration costs. Our staff did a very extensive search to determine the best agency to administer the funds. And I'm glad to say Mission Asset Fund rose to the top because they are experienced during the past 10 years where they handled similar cash grants, not only in San Francisco, but nearby states.
Right.
They do a very careful job of vetting the applicants to make sure they are first very low income and are struggling. It's interesting that their average family income is less than $30,000.
Yeah.
And how you survive on that in Silicon Valley is still a mystery.
With the family.
Exactly, right. Exactly. So these folks usually have a very discrete emergency. And Mission Asset Fund has the expectation that the recipient family will be able to maintain stability after receiving this grant. And we leave it up to the family to decide how to best spend the money. Right. Either for food, childcare, medicines, outstanding bills, or even just gas for their car.
Right.
Mission Assets partners in this effort is Good Samaritan House in San Mateo. They provide real intensive case management that connects the families with additional resources in the community to help them survive until they can go back to work.
Yeah.
The other partners are the Legal Aid Society and Faith in Action. They help identify the most needy in our community.
Right. Thank you, John. Jose, you know, why don't we, Fritz, why don't we put up the slide of with one of the recipients and just her story. I think, Jose, this speaks to some of what I said at the beginning, the struggles that our undocumented neighbors face. So can you go into more depth now about the folks you are really helping and, you know, how much they contribute to the fabric of Silicon Valley and our economy, and highlight what they're going through, particularly in San Mateo County?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, Nicole, you did a wonderful job explaining that, you know, that how immigrants are integral, you know, not just in San Mateo, but really around the area and our country. And there's no question about that. You know, I mean, there's not to prove or demonstrate, you know, people's humanity. I mean, I think we see that, know that
every day. Yeah, my mom was an immigrant. Many people don't realize that. And so I'm a first generation American. So, you know, this is personal and professional for me, this issue.
Yeah. And I think it is for us all. I mean, I've heard John's, you know, your story as well. And I think we're all motivated by that. And I think this is the moment to do more, right? And what we're getting is that, you know, we're getting hundreds and thousands of applications every day, you know, by people, you know, again, in San Mateo County and, you know, also throughout the country, you know, really appealing for help. And then through this application process, you know, people are telling us their story. They're sending us pictures. They're calling us. They're emailing us. They're sending, you know, Zendex tickets. I mean, we're getting, you know, communications from people all over. And I wanted just to kind of note this one particular story because it was so striking, you know, to me of how, you know, this issue of the pandemic and the economic crisis is something that people are living in a ways that, you know, it's hard to understand and hard to comprehend. One, because our country we have never been through something like this before. Right. You know, we've never seen the levels of unemployment. We've never seen the levels of just, you know, of anxiety that is all over the country. And people that are most in need are the ones that are actually, you know, feeling the most pain. And so I want to really take a moment and really just read this story because I want to sort of communicate her words in the way that she wrote them. Now, Virginia, she lives in San Mateo. She wrote this in Spanish, so we had her, you know, translated it.
Right, thank you. Yeah,
just to help that. But again, you know, then Virginia's story is indicative of what is happening with, you know, to thousands of families, our neighbors, you know, in San Mateo and throughout the Bay Area.
Yeah. Please read it. Yeah, please do.
It says the COVID-19 pandemic affected me physically, emotionally, financially, and my entire family in the same way. I was hospitalized for COVID-19 for 18 days away from my family who became infected with the COVID-19 virus after me. One of my sons was in the hospital during the end of his high school while I was still hospitalized, and my husband and younger son were recovering and quarantining at home. Not being there physically to support my family made my days more sad and helpless. My husband has lost his 2 jobs, and we have no income for our home. Now that we are recovered, my oldest son and my husband have not been able to find a job to contribute to our home. I've returned to work with my only by the same 4 hours modified work. Many parts of my body feel different, and I tire easily when I work. Due to all this, and the managers of the apartment where I used to live asked us to leave the room where the 4 of us lived. Our expenses and needs have not stopped. And, you know, so she, you know, in this story, there's a
lot in that story.
There's a lot there, and everything is real. Everything is true. People being out of work for months on end, you know, people being quarantined in places where they don't have a secured housing. Even people that are infected by the virus, they, you know, they might recover, but their bodies are not the same. You know, she talked about that as well. And so this is the type of again, the story, and folks don't have any sense of relief, from the government, and that's why we needed to do this.
Right. I also want to point out that she said she's been asked to leave the room where 4 of us live. She did not say apartment. She said the room.
Yeah.
Where 4 of us lived, and that is the reality of so many of our undocumented neighbors. John, would love to hear, why is this issue so important to you, and why should others care?
Well, first of all, I really don't think it's fair that so many of these families that worked in industry, whether they were custodians or worked in a restaurant as a cook or as a server or in a hospitality industry, all these people had to have ITN numbers, individual taxpayer identification numbers. They weren't eligible for a Social Security number because they weren't documented. So they had income taxes deducted from their salary every week or month. And now, through this kind of cruel situation, they're not eligible for any of the unemployment benefits, even though they've been paying into this account for many years, not even eligible for Medicaid. And I just think that's not fair.
Right.
That's really why I jumped on this one. Of course, I'm the product of immigrant parents, just like you are. And so I had some sympathy in that respect.
Yeah. Yeah. Jose, why don't you go into talking about the fund itself? And, yes, how it works. And I believe it's a true example of public-private partnerships, which I'll ask John about in a minute, but why don't you tell us?
Yes, definitely. So we started this work back in March, where we created what we call the Rapid Response Fund, and we've managed several different funds beyond the San Mateo Fund, to the point that we've already raised, including San Mateo, close to $30 million to give out, in $500 grants. In San Mateo, we're giving out $1,000 grants, because John was very adamant that we really needed to help families, in a significant way, and I totally agreed with that. And so thankfully, John came in with a $5.2 million grant.
Right.
But more importantly, John did this. He said, here's 5.2, and I'm going to work to double that. And he's actually done that.
I know. So before you go on, John, please tell us the magic of your fundraising.
Well, let me just first of all give a shout out to some of our early donors. The first group I approached was Magnify Community, and a number of their donors stepped up.
And some of them are on the call. So
let me just give a shout out. Again, our very early donors were the Grove Foundation, the Dave and Lucille Packard Foundation, the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative, the Sandhill Properties Foundation, Taub Philanthropies, Janet and Clint Riley, Laura and Gary Lauder family, the Atkinson Foundation, Sunlight Giving, Stephen, excuse me, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Okay. Sunlight Giving, Steve Dosart, George and Judy Marcus, Connie and Bob Lurie, Mark and Mary Stevens, Becky and Jim Morgan, Gloria Principe and John O'Farrell, Yale Gosham, Dylan Smith. Together, they've contributed about $3.5 million. So with my $5.5 million plus a couple $100,000 to cover Jose's overhead, we're currently at $10.7 million. And this morning, I got a very important call that Facebook has stepped up as our first corporate partner.
Excellent.
And I think this is important that they've joined our efforts, because they are going to create a challenge for other corporations in San Mateo County to also step up. And I also received another $150,000 from Give Forward Foundation this morning. So we're well on our way.
Great.
And hopefully those on the audience that have donor advised funds would like to know how they can help, at the end of this webinar, there'll be information how they can contact Jose's staff, because we have a goal of $15 million. We're well on our way with the 10.7. And I think between the corporations in San Mateo County and those that are your clients, we can make our goal of 15 million.
Right. And there's a number of folks on the call who have private foundations as well. And at the end, you'll see a slide with all of the information. And then our staff are also available to help make the connection to Jose and the fund. So this slide that's up shows the need, doesn't it, Jose?
Yes,
the numbers.
And I want to express my deep gratitude for you, John, for starting the fund and doubling it, and now well on our way to tripling it. This is amazing to see you do your work. The work on our side, what we do at MAF is to manage the inflow of applications. That as of this, this week, we've had over 16,000 people, and these are people living in San Mateo County, apply for assistance. And I kind of gave you a sort of a breakdown of where these people live in terms of the pre-applications, and then also the grants that we've already approved, through the process. Really, the way the application process goes is that they start a simple pre-application that really allows us to screen individuals before we invite them to complete a full application. In the full application, we really do look at the severity of need, because we really truly want to help or kind of focus the help on the people that are most in pain. And so there we look for people that that have no incomes, people that have families and children in their household,
right?
People that really are telling us that they're even experiencing being sick by the virus itself, and knowing that this is what we call sort of like an equity-based lens at giving, that instead of giving the grants like on a first come first serve basis, we basically analyze that data so that we can say, look, for this particular family, $1,000 could really go a long way, and really help them stabilize their families, stabilize and give them, fighting chance so that they can continue on, another day. And so we go through that application process. It's all online, but people still, send us emails, they call us. We have Facebook Live events to provide more information and guidance, for people to complete the application. And we're also definitely working with our partners locally that John mentioned earlier to kind of get the word out. And so our task at MAF is really just how do you manage all that information, the data, and making sure that that we're adhering to the principles and also the mission of this fund, which is helping the most needy. But of course, none of this can happen, and I'll just stop here. None of this can happen without any funding. I mean, we have the technology, we have the ability, we have the know-how, but without any funding to give, without any source of support, the best of technology is useless.
Right. One of the things, there's a couple of questions that have come in, and I want to weave them in because I think it's really critical. One of the questions that was asked is about the proliferation of groups, helping maybe overlapping in terms of the populations that they're serving. One of the things that really has attracted us to what you've been doing is you have partnered with some of the kind of the anchor organizations in San Mateo County, and that already collaborate. Samaritan House collaborates with a number of the organizations so that you can understand and get the word out and ensure that there's other services that are being provided to the applicants, right? So you're facilitating the dollars, but the Samaritan House and the other partners are ensuring that there's other needs are being met for the families, whether it's
definitely, and then that's going to be an ongoing work, so the organizations like Samaritan House and Faith in Action and Legal Aid, they need support throughout coming months, because that work is not a one-time intervention, but it's a long-term intervention. But I think one of the key distinctions, and really I want to be very clear about this, is that by us focusing very intently on the least of the, or the ones that are the ones that have the least and the last, is really trying to be mindful that sometimes when we have like a one, a first come first serve basis, that sometimes the people that need it the most won't get the support. And for us to be very clear about focusing on, people that have no documents, people that have ITIN numbers, or people that have, live in mixed status households, because those are the folks that actually got explicitly excluded from the CARES Act that the federal government put out there. Those are the ones that John mentioned, as they're the ones that are contributing to the tax base but are not getting any relief whatsoever. Now, we're also very mindful that this moment we all need help. Everybody needs help, and that is true. I mean, but we're trying to be more specific on the folks that have no access to have any relief. And in this particular slide, you can kind of see the results of that. That 40% of the people that are getting grants right now from us have no income whatsoever. They're the ones that, that the stories that we, that I just kind of read is like they have nothing coming into the household, or people are surviving with $1,000 or $2,000 a month income. And so these are folks that are really, hurting. At this point.
What's the range of the grant sizes? This is another question that's come in. What's the range of the grant sizes for the families? And is it just one? It's about, I'm sorry, say it again.
$1,000. So all grants are the same size as $1,000.
Okay.
So it's not a, again,
not
it's I mean, it's a significant.
And then can families come back after they've received it? So it's a one-time.
One time.
Right.
Now, it's a one-time, and then definitely we're trying to say that, now philanthropy we're doing a lot, but we can't do it all.
Right.
Government needs to step up. County government, state government, federal government, they cannot ignore the millions of people that are, in one breath we call them essential workers, and in the next breath we say that they're not worthy of assistance. We can't do that. But in the meantime, I think we have to step up as civil society, as people of means, so that people can eat, so they can buy food, so that they can pay their bills, because they need to do that now. But we also need to, again, consider what we need to do in the long term as well. Right.
What do you think how long do you think the $15 million target that John has will last? How long?
I mean, we are accepting applications now. We are, aggressively doing outreach, media, trying to get more people to apply. But as you can see in those numbers there, we've already received over 16,000 applications. We've invited over 10,000 people to complete a full application. And then we're working with them to kind of go through the process. And so, I mean, as of now, we could have spent the 10 million. We've done, 6 million, like 6.5 million at this point. Okay. But in the next 2 or 3 weeks, we could actually go through the 50 million. But also know that, we will always have, these, the contact with this individual. So as money comes in, we will be able to sort of deploy it, directly.
Deploy it, yeah. How long, what's the turnaround? So from the time that they do the pre-application to actually getting the $1,000, how long does that take?
It takes days, 2 or 3 days if they follow, that sort of the priority of people that have no income and children, we invite them right away. But there are some people that are working. There are people that do have jobs. And so we kind of say, hey, just hold on. Let's make sure the people that have the most need kind of get through the line first. Right. But that's really important. And also, and let me just say this, because I know, John, you do say this a lot, but you didn't say it this time, which is that 100% of the money that we're raising goes right to the families themselves. And that's really important for us, because what we're providing essentially is like the pipes to make sure that people get the resources that they need. And none of it is coming to MAF. None of them is, we're holding it. It's going directly to the people that need it the most.
Yes. And I know you and I talked about this. We talk about the digital divide with shelter in place. I mean, it's the big, the huge conversation as schools start up again. People can apply on their phones, right? And it's in multiple languages. There's primarily Spanish and English. Do you have other languages too?
No, yes, so they can apply at the phone. The application is mobile friendly. Now, online application is the most efficient and effective way to get information. We can ask people to call us, because then all they'll get is a busy signal at that. Right. But so in terms of languages, the application is in English, Spanish, Chinese, and Arabic. So there's the ways for people to kind of see that information. But really, by partnering with different organizations, different communities, that's how we're actually are getting people in those communities to apply. But this is an effortless process, essentially.
Right.
But,
Right. There's some really good questions coming in. What will disqualify a family to not move on to actually filling in the application? So like the 6,000 who didn't make it from the pre-app to the app.
Right now, we're not saying no. We're not rejecting anybody. We're prioritizing.
Okay.
So that's the thing. So
okay.
So because we're prioritizing, so we at some point we might get to the point of allowing people that are making, more money or something like that. But right now, because we're this equity-based frame that I mentioned, we really need to sort of focus on that. So
and then you're right.
And then as more resources come in, we'll be able to sort of expand the prioritizing to other sort of folks. And that's why we're in a constant need of fundraising so that more people can get yes, but right now nobody's getting a no.
No, right. It's not yet. Some people are getting not yet because you're waiting for the dollars. Okay, John, so on that fundraising, a question came in, and I personally know it's just about impossible to say no to John A. Sobrato when he asks you to do something or to give. I can speak from personal experience, as can Jose. One of the questions that's come in for you, John, is how did you convince others who may be more cautious about this to give?
Well, I think the strongest argument I make when I'm talking to a donor is that, if not now, when? These folks, many of them were maintenance workers in all the office buildings in Silicon Valley that are now closed. So they've lost their jobs. As I mentioned earlier, many of them are servers and cooks in restaurants. Some of them are your housekeepers, your gardeners, even caregivers. Mm-hmm. And these folks have helped us for many years. And right now it's time for us to help them. And so that's kind of been the bottom line of my appeal. And fortunately, I've had a lot of great response. I'm going back to the county of San Mateo in mid-September after their budget review is completed. And I've been assured by the supervisors that they're going to seriously consider additional millions of dollars.
Right.
I have a $15 million goal of my own, not counting government. And again, I'm very hopeful of those on this call that have the resources to help will step up. As I say, if not now, when?
Right, right. There's a question about how we amplify that this work is going on, and social media definitely is one. Jose, how are you all getting the word out? And John, we're going to be putting this on our website, right? This call to action will be on our website. So, and I know you and the Sobrato organization have also talked about this, and you've been on other news media interviews. So John, I know you are definitely out there with your megaphone on this. Jose, how have you been amplifying the message about the fund and the need?
Yeah, I mean, we need your help. I mean, we need your help to get the word out, to talk to your neighbors, to talk to your friends. We need your help to contribute. I mean, and I guess I want to sort of convey that message that their contributions are going to be well used. We're not going to spend it on overhead, on technology. It's going to go directly to the people that need it so they can buy food and pay for rent. Right. Now, in terms of getting the word out to the actual clients, I mean, we're in media all the time. I mean, I did a Channel 2 interview yesterday. I did a radio interview this morning. I mean, the word is out. I mean, that's how we got 16,000 people to already apply, saying like we need help. But we need to also let people know of where to contribute. And I think that's where John's leadership has been so key to even having this conversation happening. But so and that's what we need to talk to our friends. We need to let them know that the time is now to help, because people are feeling the pain now. And one last thing I'd like to say about this is that that the help is more than just the money. Yes, $1,000 goes a long way for this family's budget, but it's about showing that we care, showing that we see them, showing that we know that they're there, showing that they're not ignored, or that they're not being left behind, showing that despite the fact that the federal government is like completely forgetting about them, is that our neighbors were not. And I think that's where, the idea of coming, in community is more than just, it's even more important than the money itself. But that's the message I think is really important. And that's what we're doing, for this particular fund.
And there's a question about the administration of the fund. John, I believe you provided administrative dollars so that every dollar raised can go straight to the individuals and the families in need.
Well, it's not only the $200,000 that I provided to cover the overhead of Legal Aid Society and Good Samaritan House, Faith in Action, and of course, Mission Asset Fund. But I think what's unique about Mission Asset Fund is they get all their operational money from philanthropy.
Right.
All of it. So all the money that they've raised over the years gets out to the families in need. And I think that's really unique.
Right. So, speaking of unique, and there's a couple of questions here about beyond San Mateo County. Jose, is this a model that other counties can take up? I mean, are you documenting it? Can others, see what's happened? You have the public sector, right? The county stepped in. You have a generous philanthropist who is, helping with the fundraising, doing the fundraising. And then you have you and the partners. I mean, this is what it's going to take on this issue.
I would love every county to have a John. I'm afraid we're like the only counties lucky enough to have him. Our work is national. I mean, we've already received, over 140,000 applications for help from across the country. I think for us, because we're local, I live in Oakland, our offices are in San Francisco, we're in the Bay Area. I think we have this unique blend of each other here. So we need to do what we can locally.
Right.
But we're trying to communicate what we're doing. But different communities, they're struggling just as much, and so we're trying to provide some help, for those folks as well. But this is something where, I'll be honest with you, this is where we're so focused on just doing the work that we're not out there marketing math or marketing this, marketing that. It's more like we have to do the work because the need is so great right now.
Right.
And I think people are starting to pay attention. They're starting to pay attention in the way and manner that we're carrying out the operation so that they can actually start, replicate it themselves. But my time is really focused on, fundraising, making sure that we have enough money so that we can get it out, and making sure that the operations is seamless and it treats our clients with respect and the dignity they deserve.
Right. And do you know
I'd like to make
go ahead, John.
a further clarification. Frankly, I took my inspiration from Santa Clara Strong.
Yes.
Jennifer Lovin's Destination Home. I'm on their board, and I thought it was great because they raised over $20 million for phase 2. San Mateo also had a San Mateo Strong. They were started last March.
Right.
And those dollars went to primarily the small businesses and to nonprofits so they could keep their doors open. And some of the money, a small portion of it actually went to the families. But all that money
is gone.
Is gone.
Yes.
So, I've been a resident of San Mateo County for 57 years. And I just thought I should take it upon myself to do something similar to Santa Clara Strong in San Mateo County. And I'm just delighted how the community has responded. It's been terrific.
Right.
And, all we can do is raise more money because the need is enormous.
Yes.
Enormous.
Yes. Yes. Jose, is this similar to community bridges in Santa Cruz County? Community bridges and what they're doing?
I do, and I think I can't speak to specifics about what they're doing and how they're doing it. I just for us, what we're trying to do again is kind of keeping it so focused on the people that were left out from the CARES Act, and that is really our rallying point.
Rallying point, right?
Call to action, because that was so blatantly, unfair, as John said. that, for the folks that are paying into the tax base to
And
not
they get
get
nothing.
any money in their time of
Right.
greatest need, while we say that they're essential workers.
Right.
And that to me was just so like stark, and so we had to step up and do
Right.
something. And so this is not about helping everyone. While I understand that everybody needs help, but to us it's like we have to focus on the least of the, because
Right.
sometimes they're the ones that need the most.
Right. Fritz, why don't you put the slide up of where people can get in contact with Jose and give the next slide. And while you're doing that, there's a question about, do we know if homelessness in San Mateo County has increased as a result of COVID? Absolutely. It's increased in every county in the Bay Area, including San Mateo. I don't have the data on me right now, but John and I are on the Silicon Valley Recovery Roundtable, and we see data pretty regularly, and the numbers just continue to increase in terms of homelessness. And one of the things that this fund is helping with is preventing these folks from going into homelessness, right? You're giving them kind of this lifeline right before they do end up on the street. So this is just one of the examples of what can be done to save people from tipping into it. On the screen, you will see how do you get in touch with Mission Asset Fund to give to this. And again, if you're one of our donor advised fund holders, you can see the grantee is Mission Asset Fund and the purpose is Immigrant Relief Fund for San Mateo County. You can contact Mission Asset Fund if you're not a DAF holder and you're on the call directly, dev@missionassetfund.org, and then there's their phone number as well. So you can get in contact with them, and we will also send out a thank you for everybody who's registered and been on the call. There's for my staff, there's somebody who would also like an address to Mission Asset Fund. So let's just make sure that that's in the thank you email that goes out. Do you have to have an EITIN to apply?
So if they do not have one, they will still be eligible for.
Mm-hmm.
If they have one, that is the clearest way that we know that they were excluded from the CARES Act. And also people that may have a Social Security number, but they may live in a mixed status household. And so that's why the application process is a little bit nuanced, but we're, definitely, they don't have an ITIN number, those are the folks that, we still want to help.
Okay, so that's not necessary. Yes.
Yes.
And just making sure that we include the mailing address in the thank you email that came up. And Leonard, Eli, hello, asked a question about how we are all supporting the local community funds. One, we want to make sure that the community funds that are based in San Mateo County know that this is available, and so that they can spread the word and make sure that the organizations that they support are aware of this. The Mission Asset Fund is the coordinating body for San Mateo County around specifically relief for undocumented immigrants. In Santa Clara County, it's been Destination Home that's been doing it for undocumented folks in Santa Clara County, which is what John said he got his inspiration from when he saw how Destination Home was supporting and how successful it was. So that he used that as a model. There's another question. Can you clarify why you went with cash assistance and not rental assistance?
That's a great question.
I'd like to answer that if I could.
Please do, John.
Right now, there's a rental moratorium in most of our neighboring counties, extending through August this year.
Right.
I know San Mateo County is considering extending that. And quite frankly, I think it's going to need to be extended until the federal government or the state of California steps up, because after 6-7 months of rent deferral, these families are facing $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 in outstanding rent. And there's no way a low-income family can ever pay that back.
Right.
So there's some bills going through the legislature now that would offer some sort of long-term repayment schedule for a landlord that forgives rent. Some have suggested they could pay it back over a year, or some have suggested as long as 5 years. So these bills are, and also the landlords need some form of relief, some sort of mortgage forbearance during this COVID crisis, because these landlords that are not, smaller landlords that are not receiving rent just can't survive long term. So I'm hopeful that the legislature will come up with something meaningful. I know there's a committee looking at this in about another week. And so I'm hopeful by September or so, we'll have some form of a solution. So quite frankly, there may be exceptions where, like the woman that you heard about that's living 4 people to a single room, you know, that might be a special situation where she has to pay her landlord. But I don't think the majority of people in this predicament need to worry about paying the rent for the next several months.
They need food and, you know,
food and other
formula
essential,
for their babies. They need these,
everything from diapers to gasoline, God knows what, you know.
Right. Jose, do you want to add to that?
I think John hit it right there. I mean, I believe in freedom of choice. Even poor people need freedom of choice, and then they're the ones that know best what they need at this given moment. And while we need those protections against, you know, foreclosures and so forth, I mean, they still need to eat today and tomorrow, and so this is going to relieve, you know, to relieve that. So I think that's why this makes a lot more sense. And,
What are the needs actually to that point? You know, and we're getting close to the end. So John, I'm going to have you close with a big ask at the end, making sure that people understand why we're even on this call. But what are the trends that you're seeing in terms of the needs, Jose, the very real needs that you're seeing?
We're hearing a lot of stories about people being infected themselves by the virus, and needing to quarantine, but not having space to do so because they live in a very tight quarters already. And so that's like a big issue, and people are telling us that, you know, those stories even more. And so they don't have any alternatives. But, you know, and so we're trying to figure out how can we, you know, provide even a little bit more help to the people that actually are getting, you know, are testing positive for the virus, so that we can prevent them from, you know, infecting other people, including their family members. So that's like a big issue is coming up. And I know, you know, folks in the San Mateo County government are starting to think about, well, how can the county government step up and help them more directly, you know, in a significant way.
Yes. There's an tip or a suggestion that came through in the Q&A, Jose, to invest in radio ads. Most of the Latino workers have the radio on at all times, is what the suggestion is, to get the word out.
Yeah, you know, we thank you for that suggestion. You know, we've been fortunate to actually have gotten a lot of Spanish media attention for free. You know, Telemundo, Univision. I mean, this morning I did like a Grande 10. It was like a 20-minute interview conversation with, you know, so I mean, so the word is out. That's not the problem. We have 16.
We need the money. We need the money.
If all the DAF holders listen to Spanish radio, yes, we'll invest in that and get the word out for them. But the word is out, you know, and because the need is so great, you know. But I think what we need is to make sure that we have enough funding to help the people that are already there.
And then last question for you, Jose, on that, on the process, tracking requirements. What do you use the partners to help distribute the funds, or you distribute the funds directly to the families, right?
Right. So we are the ones that manage all of it, which is you know, the application, the approval, and then when we do the distribution, it's actually in a way of either a direct deposit into people's checking accounts, or mail them a hard check, and and so that way there's, you know, there's an options on how they get that, but we're the ones that manage all the funds and do all the accounting, so that way it's centralized and is very, you know, tightly controlled. So partners are helping us get the word out, making sure that people have help in the application process.
Right.
But we do everything, on the back end.
Great. John, somebody just asked if what can we do as a community to help push that legislation forward? We need to contact your representatives in Sacramento, right?
No, exactly. There's so much pressure on the various legislatures because everybody's worried about this impending doom. We can't have thousands and thousands of people. I mean, look at the state. There could be 1 million people out on the street,
right,
if they lose their homes. So the government needs to step up. The fix is way beyond anything the county of San Mateo or the county of Santa Clara can fix on their own.
Right.
We have to rely on the state. And quite frankly, I think it's going to be a situation with all the expenses the state is facing now and this huge multi-billion-dollar deficit,
right,
that they're going to have to issue some kind of revenue bond to pledge future tax revenue when this economy improves, which may take 2 or 3 years to occur. But then the government can pay back that revenue bond when the economy recovers and their tax receipts return. In the meantime, we have a very pressing need. There's 57,000 undocumented residents living in San Mateo County alone. As Jose showed on his screen, that he's made about 6,000 grants to date. We have so far twice the number of applicants, so then we have paid out in grants, and that figure is increasing every day. So we need to get in more money. As I said, if we had right now, there's 10,700,000 raised, which will help about 11,000 families, but there's 57,000 of them out there. We can't help them all, but I'd sure like to be able to say we've raised $15 million in total. We can raise 15,000, we can help 15,000 people through Jose's fund, and even more if I can get other governments to step up. So I really thank everybody for their attention.
Yes.
And again, my plea is, if not now, when?
And exactly, the urgency of now, it is critical. And as we've heard, both in terms of Virginia, the story that you read, Jose, these same folks are literally propping up our communities and our economies, and they're the ones on the front line, essential workers doing essential jobs. They're getting the virus they can't eat. They don't, they can't pay their rent. They can't buy diapers. It's the twisted, sick irony of what we're facing right now in our region. So with that, you have the information on the screen of how to contact Mission Asset Fund for DAF holders, what you use in the donor portal. You will all be getting an email thanking you for participating, and you'll get more information on that. There's information also that in addition to funding, not instead of funding, and some of you may be attorneys that have pro bono time that you could offer Spanish speakers. So we need translators. There's other things you can be doing. And of course, we need you all to be contacting the legislators up in Sacramento to ensure that the legislation, particularly on the rent relief and both the renters and for the landlords, that comes through and that legislation actually gets passed to help these folks. It's going to take all the sectors together. And I do want to thank you for being on. Next week, Fritz, we have another important issue. We are going to be talking about getting out the vote with Stacey Abrams. You are all invited on August 13th. Absolutely critical to talk about what it's going to take to save our democracy. So we look forward to seeing you with that. And we also have Black-led organizations giving guide up on our website. This is Black Philanthropy Month. So 2 things for you to lean in on. John, pleasure having you on our webinar today. Thank you for what you were doing. Thank you for being the the seed funding for this and for encouraging others, both privately as well as corporate-wide, to make donations to the fund. Thank you for taking this issue up and being such a champion.
And thank you, Nicole.
Yeah, absolutely.
And thank the questions. They were all great.
Yes, great questions. We tried to get as many of them in as I could. Jose, you and your team, thanks for what you're doing every
John,
day.
thank you.
Every day. Hopefully with
Okay.
this webinar, we've gotten you some more resources. Great.
Thank you, John. Really appreciate your leadership.
Thank you. Onward.
Onward. Thanks, everyone. Be well.